Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wednesday. It is the past, the present, the future. I heard a good saying one time. It said tomorrow is the future, yesterday is the past, today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. And so I give you the gift of Ranga on this beautiful Wednesday, be it subject, be it object, or be it observer. What say you, Ranga?
I just read your description in that LinkedIn post. It was nice. It's always a point of curiosity, right? The subject object thing. It's about where you draw the line. I think that's where we go back to. Where do I want to enclose the space that I want to consider myself? And then there is a outside view. So I felt that it's easier to erase the line rather than sustain it. It's too much energy. If you are noticing, it's just too much energy in keeping up those barriers of separation. So do you feel the same way? Is that why was that the thought behind that post?
Well, I would agree the amount of energy that goes into trying to dissect our daily life is immense. And I think that is the point of contention for most people. Like that's where you get stuck. We talk about depression as being stuck in the past and anxiety as being trapped in the future. But I can't get past this. There's some sort of thing that pulls it all together. And it's like this subjugation, whether we're subjugating words or we're subjugating people. And I just feel this weird sort of gravity towards language. And like the more that I think about it, the more it enthralls me. And the more that I think about it, the more I see it in my life acting out on the world stage. And not so much in the noises I make with my face, but in the actions that I have with the trees, with my cats, with my family, with the workplace. No matter what, it's this shell or this cocoon, like you might say, that like I think we're breaking out of, and I think it's just part of language. So an example is in any conversation, we have a subject we're talking about, and then I think of it more like this. Like I think that in any relationship, it seems to me one person is a subject and the other person is an object. But if you think in that particular way, aren't you objectifying the person that you're talking to?
Definitely right. And the person or thing or just so-called non-living thing for me, which contains consciousness, right? Does it have a subjective opinion, right? The question of solipsism comes to my mind, right? You're the only conscious being and everything else is an autonomous entity that is just happening, to serve for your life, right? That question is there. But more so, equally along the lines, the other question is, what if the other person is also subjectively perceiving you as an object? So at that point, the question is, are you the object or the subject, right? And it's confusing. It's so confusing, but I think that thought process gets my mind to at least calm down
Mm-hmm.
to a certain extent, uh, to participate in that dynamic play.
Yeah, do you think that that's you taking on the role of the observer at that point in time?
The role of yeah, I would say awareness, right? Not just
Yes.
being restricted to this body, trying to I do not believe in empathy as much as it's conventionally defined. I think it's very difficult to get to that place of empathizing, because we are I believe we are so triggered with our survival instincts, and most of our actions stem from fear of death. So there is going to be a selfish attribute, which is not a bad thing. It is necessity for survival, right? In that sense, the before we split into this idea of maybe I am the awareness watching my thoughts, we are in those thoughts, right? So
Right.
during that, all these subjugation is happening, right? So when we go to awareness, so which awareness am I? Am I the awareness just trapped in this body, or the awareness trapped in that body, or the awareness that is existing as consciousness just because it doesn't have the senses? So where am I, right? And that question doesn't have an answer. So continuously asking that is it seems, even though it seems hard at that moment, it seems much more easier for me, rather than doing the whole subjugation and playing that game of you
What do
and
you
me.
what do you mean it doesn't have an answer? Like why can it be both? It seems like it's a both and to me. Like you are both. You're
Yes, yes,
both.
yes. It's this takes me to this scene that I saw in this new series called A Trip to Infinity. Did you get a chance to catch that?
I have not. No, please tell me about it.
It's beautiful. It's a 90-minute movie on Netflix, and it's amazing. It's great. It has all these mathematical concepts and different people integrating different multidisciplinary thing, trying to explain what infinity is for them, right? And one of the most simpler explanations to that is, uh, add, use the numbers 1 plus 1 minus 1 plus 1 minus 1 and take it to infinity. What's the answer, right? So it's not 1 or 0, it's both 0 and 1, right? So that's what infinity is. And in that sense, yeah, when we keep asking, am I the subject or the object, or am I both, right? The mind is always, for me at least at this point in time, it's not consistently sticking to the awareness part. It
Right.
goes into the egoic tendencies to, oh, there is still an identity game I want to play out of it. And that comes from a lot of, I think I was talking with my friend about this, it comes from a lot of conditioning, right?
Hmm.
So with practice, I think it becomes a smoother transition. For example, I think 2 months back we had our first podcast, and I was nervous as heck. Like for 5 minutes, I think my friend also said for 15 minutes. I think I took time to settle in, and it changed. I think 2 episodes back it was 3 minutes of nervousness, 2 minutes. Now it's like 10 seconds before, just before I click the link. Hopefully,
Right.
I'll get to the point where I can click the link and be like, "Yep, George, just a moment of nervousness, right?" So it's I feel like it's always going to be there. It's about how soon you come back to what is reality for you, right? And it goes without saying that we create our own reality.
Yeah, it's a great point. What what is the hang up then? Like why do you think so many of us, and I think everyone goes through this in their life at some point in time, but what is this hanging on then? Is it this inability to understand that you're both the subject and the object, or is it sort of this guilty feeling for objectifying people, or is it maybe a sort of empowerment for being a certain way? Like what do you why is it that we some of us live our life around this relationship? Do we not know another way? Is there not another way to do it?
Yes, I definitely think so. Until we know there is a better option, we simply don't know about it, right? So it's quite hard to imagine that something else exists, right? It's like, what are the words that you know? I'm talking English, right? Maybe there are one
Mhm.
or two new words that I say which you do not know. You're not going to perceive it. So in that sense, you're going to perceive all the words you know, and you're going to think that, oh, I understand everything this person is saying. But the moment you come across a word that has caught your attention, right? Let's say outside on a newspaper, or when you're meditating, or when you're taking time to understand, there is a little bit the opposite way. I only know a little bit. There is always so much to not know, right? When you get to that word and you realize, at least I have realized, within the 48 hours, you hear that word again. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait, is it synchronously happening, or is it always existing? And my perception has attuned to that, right? So when we don't know, we think we know everything. Once we explore that new part of, oh, there is something new, and then we are always in a, so there is also need to be a healthy balance, right? Suppose if I'm talking and you're consistently questioning, wait, is he adding any new word that I'm not aware of? Now you made me started thinking, right? That balance between that, and I should also be able to give that leeway of, um, give myself the freedom of doubt that, no, I am understanding him so that I can listen. You know what I mean? You can't just completely hear stuff, neither you can consistently think with what's happening, right? I think I think I drifted a bit, but this reminds me of what Eckhart Tolle says. On his talks, right? He talks with people, and he just says, so I am talking, you're listening, but you're not consciously processing every single word. Like, you're not doing it. There is a flow to this, and you're just understanding, right? And that's the beauty of it. We don't take a step to back to like, oh, I have to listen to this. Listening is such a hard thing, right? We don't do that. At least hearing, we don't do that. Listening is a whole another aspect where you're paying attention,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, as I said, I'm just gibberish with all these things because it comes as a random set of thoughts, and to put it into words, it's just difficult. And to your question of subject and object, it goes back to this thing. The whole reason I mentioned that if we don't know something, we are not going to look for it, is because the whole idea of subject and object is created by a subjective mind, right?
Hmm.
So when we get out of it, I don't think these labels work anymore.
Yeah, I think that's where we are right now. I think that we are working our way towards the end of labeling, because it is these labels. It is these labels that have pigeonholed us into small mindedness. It is these labels that have taken from us our imagination. It is the label of conditioning that has allowed us to exist, which is a great thing, but exist on a plane that, and to exist in a container that no longer can hold us. You
Can,
know, I
yeah.
think, and I really feel we're on the cusp of, and this is just me kind of spitballing too, but I think we're on the cusp of fundamentally changing our language. And I only speak two languages, and I know you speak. How many languages do you speak, Ranga?
I speak two languages too.
Okay.
One is my mother tongue Tamil, and one is English. I learned Hindi a bit, but I understand a little bit. But mostly two languages. Yeah.
Okay, so in it's the languages that condition us. You know, like if like I have my little daughter Sky. You know, when she was little and you got her on your knee and you're bouncing and things are coming around and you'll see a bird fly by and you're like, oh, that's a hummingbird. Like you're already, in some ways, it's beautiful because you're showing them the ways of the world and you're showing them how to maneuver in this reality that we call it. But in the same way, every time you teach them something, you're stealing from them because you are not allowing them to come up. Like this could be a magical flying beast with special powers that flap. Every time it flaps its wings, it creates the butterfly effect that puts a tornado in the side chilis over there, you know? But for them, you've just went, okay, let me just take this from you because you can't have that. You need to have these tools to navigate over here. So
Yeah.
I kind of feel like the old paradigm, the old language, be it geopolitical or negotiating, like all these things are breaking down, and it comes back to the language, and it comes back to the subject-object relationship. And I think we are emerging into a new relationship with ourselves, and in doing so, with the world. Like that's kind of why I brought it up.
It's quite amazing what you said about this flying beast with magical powers, right?
Yeah.
You know, the way we have to pump up that statement, like exaggerate it, because before labeling, I feel that the connection is so defined, so mystical. It's nice, right? It's simple connection, right? A tree is a tree. It's just not labeled. It doesn't have to have a superpower of getting uprooted, going, being the
Right.
tree that is living through eternal. But it, because we have these labels, we need to use words such as, from the mystical side, like mythical side or a fictional side, to make that mind expand and see that there is something that lies beyond our normal perception, right? But you and I are going to fail miserably because it's so hard. It's really hard. It took me a lot of time to understand how a kid being given labels, it's going to restrict the view,
Hmm.
right? Because I have lived in a life of labels for so long, you know, it again, it seems like there is no other way to live. I mean, this is what has aided survival for so long. This is what has kept the food on our plates and, you know, made the ends meet, and, you know, generations have been furthering. So maybe this is it. This is the only way to do it, right? And then there is a whole another philosophical idea of like, what is my purpose here? that breaks
Hmm.
all these things.
Hmm.
My question goes back to how do we ask that? We do give platforms for the kids. When I say platforms, the labels, the meanings, the way of life, I think it's quite essential for the kid to be able to survive or navigate. But eventually, I think as human, we all get to that same part of being frustrated with not being content with the external world. I think sooner or later, or as Buddhism says in reincarnations, over course of lifetimes, there comes a point where like, man, I feel like I've done this, right? I always get this feeling. I do not believe in reincarnation the way it is said, but there is always this feeling that I, I do not have the urge to, have a family or have kids. And, there is another person, you sitting in front of me, we still have conversations, and you have a kid. Doesn't mean I stop talking to you, or does it mean like, is it the only way to live? L- there is no one particular way to live. So what I'm getting to is that particular point where I feel like I have done this, so I don't want to do this, right? But where does the questioning start? I think that's where we go back to every single time. Where does the questioning start? The question does come within. Like, what made you try all these psychedelics? It might have started off as curiosity, or even as Paul said, right? In the rave or the party setting, it
Right.
starts, right? Uh, but how is it happening to you, right? Like, for example, I wouldn't have imagined growing up in India not having accustomed to any kind of cannabis is a demonized drug in India, right?
Hmm.
And alcohol is also the same. So I've not tried anything until 21, 22. I didn't plan to come to Canada, right? Things just happened. There is this sense that I have submitted the application, I applied the work permit, I applied this. These are, namesake. It's like clicking the StreamYard link to go online, but that's all I do. After that, everything that happens is a very natural process, right? But how does this happen, right? Why me? Why do I get the chance to ask this question? And I felt like that question has helped me liberate on so many fronts, where the things that I've been bothered about, I just realized I don't have to be bothered about. But I still see
Hmm.
people being bothered about that. So my question comes to why me, right? So in that
Yeah.
thinking mind, that comes subject object, right? Subjectively, why am I experiencing something? And it also feels like cheating. I think I tell you every single time, because the labels have convinced you a life of prisoned life of survival. I don't think it's a life of being alive. What do you think?
What can you what say? Try to help me flesh that out. The question is why why me? Is that the basic question? Like, what was the very last question you had said?
Do you want me to explain why I have that thing of why me? It's more so that it also comes from attachment to other people. Let's say my dad or mom, right? Like most of
Right.
the time, I think 2 years after my psychedelics, I spent time talking to them regularly, trying to change.
Right.
See, you're living in a way. Again, it all comes from judgmental mind. Again, the subjective judgmental mind. So you have to forgive that for a part. But it comes that you're living this miserable life, right? Like. Being told that this is what you're supposed to do at this age, now that you have retired, people are telling that, oh, don't work anymore, or you this is the time to start doing traditional things, start becoming more religious, right? That's the only way. That is all you can do right now, is think of God. I agree, but not the God that we created, the God that created us, right? That's the distinction. But the point I'm trying to say is, so for the 2 years, each time I spent time talking, there'll be like ups and downs, and sometimes it feels like, oh, I think my dad got it, and 2 days later, the same patriarchal nature activities keep going on, right? And there is a point of, because of the attachment, there is a point of feeling miserable about it. Man, why don't these guys have a thought different from how they are? Like, why are they still thinking that? And then the question comes, wait, why am I thinking differently? How did I get this set of situations in my life that put me in this place where I could question existence in itself, right? because I haven't done that. I knew language, let's say, since I was 5 years old. Slowly I've been learning, and by 18 or 19 I was still able to be cohesive and put a different group of things in words, right, to communicate something. Yet there was no awareness in asking, what am I doing here? So how did that happen? Change from that to, oh, I need to ask this question and eventually go on to this path of liberating myself.
Man, I think that there's some form of projection there. Like I feel like we're trying, because I feel the same way. I often ask myself that same question, like, why me? And you know what? Like, I remember this is a similar road, but a little bit of a detour. But we're gonna get to I think we're gonna just take a little side trip around. There was a while back, about a year and a half ago, where I had taken like 75 milligrams of 4-ACO DMT. And I remember, like, I was playing with it, for a couple weeks, and then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go big. And I came home. I had come home from work, and I was fasting all day, and I talked to my wife a little bit, and I didn't have like any responsibilities, and I had taken it, and within 5 minutes, I'm like, oh my god, I can already feel this. This is gonna be strong. Oh, you get that feeling like, okay. And like I'm still in the middle of this conversation with my wife, and I'm like, love, I'm gonna take a shower. I've just taken this. It's gonna hit me pretty hard. And she's like, oh, okay, whatever. And so I remember in my mind thinking like, wow, what do I want to learn? Like if I could ask any question, like what would it be? And I thought to myself that the answer to that question that I wanted to ask was, I want to know why. And I had kind of left it in general. Like I was like, I want to know why the world works the way it is. I want to know why I am in the position I am. I want to know why me. And I remember laying in the bathtub, and I closed my eyes, and then I just saw all these different flashing, like just kids dying and war and like these horrible images, and I was like, I do not want to know why anymore. And I heard this voice call out to me, like, it's too late now. And I'm like, oh man. And I remember just laying in the bathtub, like scared, like, why did I just hear a voice? Why am I seeing all these images? And I, like, to this day, I still have a little bit of problems trying to integrate exactly what that was. However, I think the question to why me is because you asked, because you walked up to the cliff and you said, hey, what is this? And there's some, whether it's the world, it's God or Buddha or Gaia or another dimension of yourself, or you calling to yourself from another dimension. If you ask, then the answers begin to show themselves to you. The pathway opens up. When you're ready, the guru or the man or the teacher shows up. And so I think just formulating that question in your mind, why me, is the answer to that question, because you've chosen this. Because on some level, you have decided that you are the person who should know this. And maybe that means you become a teacher. Maybe that means you end up in a mental hospital. Or maybe, maybe that means that you sell all your stuff and you move to a small island, or you leave everything you've ever known and move to Canada. Like maybe that's why, maybe that part of Canada, maybe this other part of the world is where you're supposed to be, because you're supposed to influence a young man or a young woman that you'll never even know that you influence. But I think the answer to why me is a subjective one, but you're definitely the object of why me, but the subjective answers are there.
That
How's
was
that feel?
amazing. That was quite nice. Um, so I followed you until the point you said my higher self, right? That's where I
Okay.
have a differing opinion, where where there is only one higher self, whereas there's just one consciousness behind this, and we all reach the same state of awareness, and there is no, the boundaries dissolve, and you realize that it is just one as many and many as one, right? And then the question still stays, because if you give a explanation saying that my higher self, right, like you have your own branch sitting in your higher dimension, right, again it comes from boundaries. Again, it's a very subjective answer, I believe. All my questions also comes from a very subjective mindset, because on psychedelics, right, or maybe eventually with meditation, there comes a point of the self dissolving. So when that happens, along with that goes the question as well, why me? Because there is no you in that part. But subjectively, when we are talking about this question comes, and if I'm gonna choose a different perspective to what you said, and not consider there is a individual higher self for each of us, but there is not just one consciousness, right, one divine self behind this, and the question still remains, why me? It could have been someone, it could have been anyone, right? Like, it could be that billions of people are existing, right, and millions of people are getting help from the medicine. But subjectively the question comes, objectively from science point, there is a deeper understanding of the cause and effect, right? When I keep thinking of everything happening in terms of just domino effect, and there is literally, it's very peaceful for me to see it from that way, because my anger with people or culture or religion, right, dissolves completely, or at least it's an effort to dissolve completely. Because the same way I ask why me, maybe if I consider myself I'm making better choices with my life given my transitions, the other, the people that I'm judging about just don't know better, right? And it's based on cause and effect. They were taught this, based on this causes they are creating this effect, which are becoming causes for something else, right? And then they become this is the whole domino effect that is going on. So it's helpful that way. As I said, this, I'm just rambling all these because this is where my mind is
Right.
going from, right, jumping from this side to that side. And as I say, it's the pendulum for me. I see it as a journey. It's like whenever it comes to the balance, I enjoy the calmness, and it goes to polarities. And again, my friend and I were
Yeah.
talking about the how the books Ramdas wrote. It took
Mm.
me 2-3 years to understand what it meant. Like one of the lines was hippie create police and police create hippies. I didn't understand it until this suddenly I was sitting, oh wait, I am being the police to my dad, and I'm being the hippie to my dad as well. Whenever he's
Yeah.
policing me, I'm trying to be rebellious, and whenever he's being, culturally constrained, I try to be this. Oh no, you break out of it. And
Yeah.
it's liberating, and I feel like it's on some level. I think we were talking about labels the other day in the
Yes.
group, right? Labels can be harmful, again, just like anything else. It's such a magical tool, right, to keep it there. And again, sorry for jumping, but how do we
Mhm.
jump from this part to having our mindset be detached to those labels? I think that's what our important part is. Subject, object, these definitions can exist. I can call you a bastard, you can call me a motherfucker. It doesn't matter. How much are we going to get attached to that idea? Oh, how dare he talk about this? And, you know, maybe this is not the right space to do it. So, how do we get detached from that idea so that, yeah, we can say all we want to say? It's for fun.
Well, my parents got divorced when I was younger, so I guess technically I'm a bastard. And my wife has kids, so I'm technically a motherfucker as well. So I
I
see your
know.
labels and I thank you.
It's beautiful. I told my partner, she was calling her dad motherfucker, and it's like, that's the perfect person you can call, because like that is
That's
literally
exactly, yeah.
100% true, right? And nothing to be said about it. It's like, it's just a fact, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so let me our good friend Ben
Yes,
has this to say. He says, "What we know is encapsulated in a symphony of vibration encoded in sequences." See, this is why I love Ben. Like, no one else would break it down like this.
I
Interpret
know.
it. interpreted through a massive parallel processing unit we dub a brain. Our shared ability through awareness allows us to verify, to
Oh,
know, but not absolutely, but subjectively, even in objective observations. Now, I see a systems guy here. I see a guy speaking in the labels of a system, and he's really elegant in what he says. And if I take what he says and I take your question of why me, and then I also add in your idea of us being one consciousness. I don't think there can be, if we're one consciousness, there is no me. Maybe the question is why we or why us, right? Because if there's one consciousness, then you and I are just a manifestation, a thought in the mind of God, and some sort of thought that's working its way through the prefrontal cortex trying to manifest itself in the world. And so maybe the question be why us? And if
I
you want the
wanna.
answer to that question, it would just be looking at that person next to you trying to figure out who you are.
How about I just ask you one question here because I
Okay.
want you to further that explanation.
Okay.
When you say us, right? Why
Okay.
us? That question. Again, this question would be completely meaningless without them.
Hmm.
If you,
So just
what's
why?
what's the meaning of the word us if there are no them? What's the meaning of darkness and light when there is just only lightness, right? Like,
What's the
I know
sound of
it.
one hand? What's the
Yeah,
sound
yeah,
of one hand clapping? Right.
exactly.
I cut you off. It's because maybe us without them is wholeness. Maybe that's what we're trying to achieve. Maybe we can have us without them. Maybe that's the problem that we have, is that there's too much of us and them. And that if it was just us, then we'd have justice.
I've loved your wordplay for the time that I've listened to you. I've told you, his story is my favorite way to say things to people now.
Well, that like,
The grain of salt, his
hmm.
story, right? Uh, yeah, continue. I actually didn't have
What's
anything
the
to add.
grain of salt story? Tell me.
No, the
Oh,
grain of salt, and when people are saying history to people, take it
yes,
with a
yes,
grain of salt, which is
yes,
his story, right? So
yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
that's what I meant.
true. I see, and that gets me to the idea, back to language. There's so much in the etymology. There's so much in every word that just flies by over my head so much. I think this is one reason I am where I am, because when I was little, I always got caught up in words, and people couldn't even finish a sentence, and I'd be like, wait, what does that mean? Are you saying this or are you saying that? Why does this word have two words in it like that? Why is it his story? I don't want, what about our story? And the people would just be like, my teachers would just be like, dude, George, you're disrupting the class. And it's an honest question, and maybe it wasn't even something like history, but it was just small things that I didn't understand. And I always got somewhat penalized for it. And, I just couldn't figure it out. And to this day, when I hear words, like I have to stop and stare at the person, because I'm like, what are they telling me? Are they telling me this thing on a frontal level that just comes out, that they're talking about, you know, who they are? Or are they telling me that they've been abused? Like, because if you listen to what people tell you, it's somewhat frightening. People are very honest, and it comes out with this just explosion of sound. But if you have the patience to sift through the sound, you can see what they're trying to say. And like, just listen to that. Like, try and see what people are saying. Use your eyes to see their words. And like, that itself is a way of communicating more effectively. And think about how many of these little idiosyncrasies there are. Like, oh, I see what you're saying. Or,
Yeah.
there's all these. these interplay between the senses and language. And so on some level, I feel that touches the subject object relationship. But I think that there's more to it. Maybe like the observer, maybe it's like an atom or something, and there's all these things circling around it. And I don't know. I don't have a working model for it yet, but it blows my mind. And there's something there. And sometimes I think that if we could add some sort of honorifics onto our language, like the same way that we have a prefix and a suffix to denote before and after. What if we had like a new prefix, like if you put in X in front of every word that denotes honesty, that means that I know we're talking in a language that cannot be bullshitted. Like that would do away with contract law forever. Like, oh, he's speaking in Rongafor. That means he's being honest. In the same way, like why can't you have a prefix or a suffix that says I'm talking in sarcasm? And then like you could change the language that we speak by adding a word in front of another word, and it would do away with the ambiguity of language. What do you think? Let's do it. Let's just set that up.
Nah, I don't think I'm participating in these games of language creation anymore because have you seen the movie Invention of Flying?
Mm-mm. I have
No,
not.
it's quite nice where everyone is honest, that they don't know what lying is, right? So they show you, they set the premise of the movie, people are meeting for dates and it's like, see, you're ugly, I'm not going to get turned on by you, so let me cancel the date because this is not going to work, right? Things like that. And to the point where just this one person has a thought of like, a computer stops failing and he wants to withdraw some money. She asks how much is there in your account, and he says, wait, I need 500 but I only have 200. So it clicks and he says that amount and the computer starts working. But since people don't know what lying means, she doesn't trust the computer, she trusts the human's word, right? And I kind of spoiled it for you, but it's still a good movie that you can watch. But my question from there is, what if language was created for that intent only, right? What if people thought we're just gonna be honest, right? What if you're just supposed to be honest, like rather than seeing it as a way? Sorry,
No, it's good. Keep going. I got you.
what I didn't lose a chain of thought this time, like I usually do. It is more that how do I put this? Because if I feel like whenever I have tried to use these words in a different way than how I actually feel, it was towards fulfilling a desire or avoid, repercussions because of fear, right? I think it goes back to the base of what Buddhism says, cravings and aversions, right? And I feel like I just see life very simpler in that way, where I'm either trying to lie my way through to get something done or to avoid something, right? But it's because I took this vocal ability for granted, right? I had no respect for it. I didn't see it as a it's a great gift to be able to, where is this thought process happening, where is this part that's happening, in your head. As Benjamin says, it's all the parallel processing unit, which we dub as brain, for sure. Again, it's happening in a dimension, as you say, when you use idiosyncrasies like, I see what you're saying, like, wait, where are you seeing this, right?
Where's that?
Where is that? I want to also see it, right? So I feel like when I focus on that area of what's happening and I'm trying to put this in manifest form, in this manifest world, in an interaction with another being, right? So at that point, if I'm trying to see this as a gift, all I can do is be honest with what's happening. Because even your 100% honesty is a very rough approximation of your internal structure. So the moment you even begin to lie, you're 180-degree on the opposite side of your path that you should be going. So if you want to put a bunch of words with X, it's a matter of time before we start misusing it. right? Because the underlying structure I feel like the world is operating on, I don't want to go into detail about it, at least the way that I have been convinced of this capitalistic model of more, better,
Mm.
or growth, or eventual growth, right? It is kind of that model, and also the part where the compromise between helping for the future versus the present. So these are questions that I keep battling, right? So how this translate to the part is that my fundamental thinking of the brain was in a way very egoically selfish. Now I say it is selfish in a sense that I want to find out where is this selfish hiding. Did I lose you there?
I'm just trying to figure out where the selfishness hides in me.
75 mg.
75 mg, 75
Yeah.
milligrams.
Yeah. No,
It'll come
man.
out. It,
How did you try? The maximum I think I've tried is 40, and it was so good. I end up with a neck problem the next day because I do a lot of headbang for
mm,
songs. Um, but I can't think of more than 40. It's like, so when I think you were talking with Jason about your 75 milligram, and I was like, George, cool, man. I see why you want to order 2-3 grams. I order like 500 mg at once. I see why you want to order 3 grams at once. But okay, let's just jump from there.
yeah.
Forget selfishness and everything. I'm very curious because you mentioned 75 mg, right? So
Okay.
where compared to your lower doses, right?
Hmm.
How much do you think was there a conscious presence, like, or egoic presence? Right now, do you have a difference? Do you want to define what would be your egoic thing? Is ego a bad word for you or a neutral word? How do you see ego?
Yeah, let's try to define what ego is so we can have this conversation.
Yes.
I think ego is the narrowing of your view so that uh, I think that ego is the individual having a narrow view so that it only encompasses itself. And so that would be pure ego. I think on a daily basis, most people are running like 50-50. You have the ability to care about your family and want to have great conversations and want to help people. And hopefully most people do that. Hopefully most people wake up and want to make everyone around them better. However, like you said, we are selfish in that we must survive. We must have, we get back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and food and shelter. So I would say that the ego is the 50% that looks out for number one.
Mm.
Would you agree with that? Or would you want to change that in any sort of way?
I Growing up, I think I don't know if I've mentioned you. Ego in India, at least, or the terms that I have learned was related to having an attitude towards things, or having the show off, or
Hmm.
like convincing people that it's more of a status game, right? So
Hmm.
I realized my first thing was it was not the actual definition of ego, because ego was used in many fields where it was seen as a neutral thing, right? It took me time to come to that thing, but at least I dismantled the definitions that were given to me, and I started
Yeah.
approaching this with a different view. So again, I bring Ramdas here because I love the way he defines things in
Okay.
that sense, is that ego is just a vehicle through which the senses are interacting and relates to the external world,
Okay.
right?
I like that.
Right. And if you see that again, just about anything, right? It's a tool,
Hmm.
right? Now you have this tool. The funny thing is, awareness and ego, in at least by personal experience, does not coexist within myself. I do
Hmm.
not want to use words of let's not involve any other being. Let's just be you. You
Okay.
could still be selfish and selfless if it's just you two. It's just funny that way. Like, what are you going to be selfless about? It's just funny that way. But let's say you're the last person on the earth, and let's not involve family, nothing. So in that sense, you could still operate on an egoic sense, and you can operate on an awareness sense. So that's how I see it. So ego doesn't come down to letting go of our selfish thoughts, because for me ego also encompasses all fear based actions. I see ego
Mm.
as an autonomous entity that is operating to survive, right? Sometimes how I see is the survival, right, of the fear of death. I see that as the ego. It keeps changing. Sometimes I see it's just this, how traffic jams exist. One car is
Hmm.
not a traffic jam. It's like thousands of cars, and traffic jam is this illusion that's happening, right? When you are actually caught in a traffic jam, for you, it's just a car before you. The traffic jam is the concept when thousands of cars interact, right? People, I think one of the psychologists used this as an analogy to define consciousness, right? Each sense alone is something, but they will interact in a very innumerable number of connections happen, and then this self-awareness or ego, right? These all originate from the same place of interactions of senses, I feel like.
Okay.
I see the relevance between your thing and
Right.
mine. It's definitely that egoic as a selfish tendency, because I feel like it's that survival is there.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, right. So in that sense, let's continue to the part where uh, if you're also seeing ego as a neutral term, right? So how would you define, with your lower doses to medium doses to higher doses, how would you define what was happening differently between each of these trips?
Okay. So I think that a lower dose, and are we just talking about 4-ACO DMT, or are we talking about psilocybin in general?
It could be any drug. I
Okay,
love
any
all
drug.
drugs.
Yeah, all of them. You love all of them. I don't know if you love all of them. Like, there's some bad ones. Look
I know.
at you. Yes,
I've
George. I
I've
go try it.
tried I've tried Coke, and I would say
Mhm.
I it's not something I want to do because I have a Keurig machine. I'll just make 2 cups of coffee, if you know what I mean. So yeah, probably not all drugs, all psychedelics. Let's say I haven't tried,
Yeah,
so let's just come to LSD and psilocybin. So you can choose
yeah.
the drug that you want to talk about.
I real fast. I've always thought it would be funny if someone asked Sigmund Freud about his cocaine problem, and then he just said, "Sometimes a line of coke is just a line of coke." That would be funny. Okay, so I think that on a lower dose level of psychedelics, at least for me, I would say that anything between a micro dose and an eighth, so 3.5 grams, is a really good thinking dose. Like, it allows you to have full control over your thoughts, but see the world in a different way. It allows you to see everything around you with fresh eyes, if that kind of makes sense. And then if I take a higher dose, once I start getting up into a higher threshold, say somewhere between 3.5 and 7 grams, I think that that is the beginning of witnessing the slowdown of the ego as we described it. I think at that point in time, you begin to think. I think at that point in time, you're going to see a more wholeness at that level. And the more that I've done the bigger doses, until recently, between, I would say, around 15 grams, or maybe like 55 grams of 4-ACO DMT, I was under the impression that there was some sort of second plane. And what I mean by a second plane was that between 7 grams and like 13 grams, things got foggy for me. Like, it would be really intense. And, I would have some really deep thoughts, but I could never bring anything back. I once heard it said that, these big doses of psychedelics is like setting sail onto the sea of chaos, and you are whisked out into the middle of this chaotic ocean, and waves are crashing all over you, and you try and throw out your net and let it sink to the bottom. And in the midst of this chaos, as you're coming back, you pull up your net, and hopefully you can bring back an idea that you can share with the tribe. But I found between 7 and like 13 grams that the net doesn't go deep enough, or it's not strong enough, and the idea or the substance you want to bring back rips through that net. So once you start hitting, at least for me, like 15 and higher, I think that's when you begin to pierce the veil. Like, I think that is when you begin to get the clarity of the idea that can change you as a person forever. You can catch glimpses of the idea. You can see it out of the corner of your eye. Like those little floaters you have in your eye, like if you look and you're like, oh, there's something moving, but it's just like a little scratch on your eye. That is psychedelics from 0 to 14 grams. It's like a floater in your eye. But once you start hitting the higher doses, and once you hit the higher doses, the clarity becomes congruent with the idea, and you can bring it back and you can talk about it. The trick is that you're not in your right mind. And I mean that, me in words, like you're not in your right mind. Like in fact, you know what? Shit, you might be in your right mind. You might be in the part of your mind that has all the concepts. You might be in the part of your mind where all the resource material, where the raw data is formed, and that's why you can go in there and search. It's like John Searle's Chinese room when they talk about a computer. Like the computer will go, you ask a computer a question, it'll go into its database and find what you're looking for and bring it back to you. But it's more like you going into that room and looking for stuff and being like, you can ask someone to go get something for you, but the chances are they're probably going to grab the wrong color or the wrong thing. But if you go in that room, you can really find what you're looking for. So I think at these higher doses, you come back with these ideas, but the problem is, like, it's so clear. It's so crystal clear to you. And I'll give you an example. So I had recently done a dose of like 18 grams on these albino penis envies. And I came to this conclusion, like I remember coming down and looking at my library, and for some reason I was looking around, I had like the Bible out, and I'm like, dude, Jesus was totally an alien. He's totally an alien. And you know what? I'm an alien. And now it all makes sense to me. And like, I'm like, God damn it, how did I not know this? And then I thought to myself, it freaked me out because I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm an alien. Jesus was an alien. And I see all these other people that are aliens, and I'm like, man, and it freaked me out. Like for 10 minutes, I laid on the ground like, holy shit, I'm an alien. I'm a fucking alien, man. This is crazy. And then I thought, like, people need to know this. Like, what would happen? And this is balls deep in this trip. I'm like, what would happen if everybody realized that we're aliens, man? The world will go crazy. Like, that's probably why they're not telling everybody, And so, but it was clear to me as 2 and 2 plus 4. Like, I knew it without a doubt. And so when I came back down from that trip, I came to the idea of like, wow, this is what it must be like for some people in psychiatric hospitals that believe wholeheartedly that they are the second coming of Jesus. And I get it. Like, I could totally empathize with someone who is in their own mind the Messiah and totally believe it 100%. Like, I understand what that's like. And like, it's a powerful thing to think about. Like, wow, these people, it's not that they're crazy. It's that it's just a different reality. And if more people believed it, then it would be the reality.
The mainstream reality. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And so I think that I'm not sure if that answered your question as far as to the different doses and the beings and ego, but I think at the higher doses, the idea of ego no longer exists. And I think that even at doses up to like 14 grams, I don't think there's an ego death. I don't think ego death really begins to happen until you hit these higher doses where you are actually in another reality.
Okay, before I start, you had so much to say, and it was very nice. I wanted to ask, what would your translation be between, a particular dosage of shrooms and a particular dose of LSD? How do you compare? I know that they are totally different the way things happen. Yet, on some level of, let's say, achieving ego death, right? What would your rough translation be?
This is a little trickier for me because I haven't done LSD for a while. I think the most I've ever done was I think I ate a 10 strip one time. And
Is that 100 mcg in one?
I think so, yeah. Yeah,
You
it
had a
was
thousand?
yeah, well, here's the story. Here's the kind of a funny story. So, I went to Disneyland and I had an awesome Volkswagen bus. And I had planned this trip and there was going to be like 20 of us that were all going to Disneyland. And so I was the guy that could score the acid. So I had scored like, I don't know, I think I had scored like 40 hits or something like that. Okay, I'll get like 2 for everybody or something like that. And then by the time the trip came up, it was me, my sister, her friend, me, Craig, and Travis. So there were 6 of us. And we get out and we all took like 2 before we got there. And I brought them. If you have 40 hits of acid, you're probably going to bring them, right? I don't know why I brought them, but I brought them. And so we took 2, and then on right about an hour before we got there, because we wanted it to kick in when we parked. And so we get out of the van, and my friends are like, "Look, man, we should just take 2 more because we're gonna be here all day." Okay, so now we're at 4, right? And we're starting to feel pretty good, and we're cruising around, and we get to Splash Mountain, which is it's like a waterlog ride. And I
Oh yeah,
remember, yeah. And so
yeah.
we're in line, and you know, about 2 hours in, and like things are getting pretty good. I'm starting to have a little bit of trouble talking. Like my words are kind of coming out like jumbled, like and what the fuck did that guy say? I'm like, oh, sorry. And we're having a good time. And then we go on Splash Mountain, and we get into this big water fight. Hey, everybody, blah, la, 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 la. We're fighting, playing, and we get off. And I'm like, I gotta pee. So I go to the bathroom, and I realize I'm totally drenched in water, and I have like a ton of hits in my pocket. And I'm like, dude, I'm covered in water, and this LSD's in my pocket. It's probably gonna get into my skin. I should probably just eat them. And so at that point in time, I called everybody over, and we divvied up, you know, whatever I had in my pocket. I don't know if I had brought 40 with me, but I know it was about 10 that I ate that day because I ended up eating another 6, I think. Because I'm like, if I don't give, I'm gonna this is all going in my body if I don't give them away or eat them. And it was in my pants pocket. Maybe it wouldn't have, but I remember, I wasn't really in my right mind. So, yeah, that day was uncontrollable. And then I remember walking around Disneyland, and there was this guy. His name was Farley, and he was playing like the violin. He was singing songs, and like it was just so crazy. I mean, it's the happiest place on earth. And that day, I think it was extra happy. But I guess that's a roundabout way of saying, on the topic of comparing, LSD high doses to different doses of psilocybin or 4-ACO DMT, it's not a real fair comparison because I was out and about. I'm at
Yeah.
Disneyland. I'm with a group of people where the big doses I have done here were by myself.
Yeah.
One more story about Disneyland coming back. So, we had got there when it opened, and we left at 10 after we watched Fantasia and stuff. And we go back to my van. We're smoking some bowls, and I'm coming down, but like I'm still pretty fucked up, man. And I remember like I lived in San Diego, and Disneyland's in Los Angeles, so it's about an hour and 45 minutes. And I remember driving in my van like at 11:30 at night, coming down the freeway, I had a bright orange Volkswagen van with a Grateful Dead sticker on the back, and like, obviously we had a bunch of weed with us because you're gonna have to have weed if you're doing LSD, or at
Yeah.
least that was my motif back then. And
Yeah.
so we were driving in my van, and like we just fucking smoked a joint, and like, I'm doing, I don't know, 55 because that's what you do in a Volkswagen van, and I look back in my rearview mirror and I can see like my two friends are kind of passed out, and then my sister and her friend are like sitting in the backseat, kind of chit chatting a little bit, and we had the doors going, and it was just like break on through to the other side. We're jamming, and I look in my rearview mirror, and like I see a fucking cop car behind me, and I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, this is not good. And I'm in a van, with a Grateful Dead sticker on the back at 11:30 at night, and I'm like, dude, this guy's totally gonna pull me over. And
Yeah.
so I'm driving, and I look over to the side, and there's another car. Like, there's no one on the freeway except me, the cop behind me, and then there's a car in the slow lane going the exact same speed as me. I'm like, dude, what the fuck is this? This is so crazy. And like, do I tell the people behind me that there's a cop? I'm like, I probably shouldn't tell them anything because they're gonna freak out and they're gonna fuck up my driving.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Jim Morrison is just singing, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't know what's gonna happen. And the cop comes up real close, and it seemed like 20 minutes. It was probably 5 minutes, but like, I'm just driving, and then like the cop throws his lights on, and I'm like, oh, I'm fucked. And I'm like, all right, well, like I gotta wait for this car to get over. And so, like, then the cop goes I turn on my signal to get over because I'm gonna get pulled over, and then the cop gets behind the other guy and pulls him over, and I just kept going, and I was like, dude, no way. And I'm like, hey, you guys see that? And they're like, see what? But it was a weird intervention there. But thank you for letting me share that story. It's been a long time since I've got to share that story, and it was a really fun time for me. I don't know high doses. It's difficult to compare the two. I think that the loss of language on LSD is something that is definitely more apt to that. Like, there's times on high doses of LSD, be it 5 or 10, like you can't even talk. Like, I could not form any words at all. I could not talk to you. I could make noises, but it would be complete gibberish. And it seems a much more abrasive, a much more, threatening force to me, where it's like, dude, you're gonna, I just having my head pushed up against a wall. So it felt to me like there was a real changes going on that were beyond my control.
And you're talking
On
about LSD, this one.
LSD, yeah,
I see.
yeah. And I
Mm.
think that the 4-ACO DMT or any particular types of derivatives from the ones I have done, they seem to work with you in a way that is more friendly. So I think that maybe the visuals on some level seem to be a little bit less organic on LSD. They seem to be a little bit more harsh, I guess I would say, and not as geometrically friendly in the way that it treats you and your body and the way you see things. So, but I also think that maybe the boundaries are ripped away in a way not so much on mushrooms or on 4-ACO DMT. What is your take on the difference? How have you balanced the difference, and
It
what are
was
your
so
thoughts?
nice. I loved listening to you. It was nice. I had like I didn't have anything to share. So let's start from the part where you said about mushrooms, and then I'll go to LSD. Your 0 to 14 grams reminds me of the lyrics from "Comfortably Numb." Right? When I was a child, I caught a fleeting glimpse. I turned to look at the corner of my eye, and it was gone, and the child has grown, and the dream has died. It's so beautiful. Like I feel like that is true. Dosage wise, though, it differs for different people. I think I have had, again, it's all subjective experiences, but
Right.
for me, what felt like a really breakthrough has happened as small as 200 to 300 mcg of acid, and 300 is the maximum that I've tried. And I felt LSD was much more liberating. So I had, well, I don't know if you looked at my face, I had this shocking response to how you were saying about the psilocybin was gentler than LSD, which LSD was ripping apart. I was like, I feel like I hated my concept so much that when it tripped it out, I was like, man, thank goodness. Because I have had bad trips in psilocybin. There is a new research that is going on which focuses on all your insights that you get on psychedelics are not true. So
Hmm.
after you have an aha moment, it's very important to question it. You're not going to lose anything out of it. There is not going to be any loss of magic from it, right? So question it. You have nothing to lose. And I feel like that is just a prerequisite for integration, right? But the reason I said that is because I've had, let's say, 3.5 grams of golden teachers now that I've read about potency and stains. And I don't think it wasn't as much compared to, let's say, it would be 2 grams of penis envy. That's what I find in Google. But what it did was it made me really introspective.
Hmm.
Yet I felt like with psilocybin, sometimes a guide and an intention is much more necessary than LSD. Um, because as you're, it's, I wouldn't say it's gentler, but it's very smoother in breaking these barriers. It doesn't rip apart like LSD. But one of the side problems of this barriers slowly getting removed is that I felt like I got landed in one of those barriers and became obsessive over a thought. And that
Mm.
fear thought
Mm.
that was ruling
Yeah.
my life 2 years back was, oh man, I've graduated. Now I need to find a job. So I'm sitting here
Yeah.
11:30 p.m. in my room, and I wasn't comfortable and confident enough to say that I was using psychedelics, not even to my friends. So my friend is staying in the next room, and he
Mm.
and he came and he's like, I don't sleep until 2 a.m. usually. So he comes in at 11:30, he sees me curled up in the bed. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. I am not feeling good, and he left. And I'm like, that was the initial greatest trigger that sent me into this spiraling bad trip, because like,
Hmm.
dude, I'm in this state of awareness, and I'm still not confident enough. What's fucking wrong with me, right? And
Yeah.
why couldn't I be honest? Is it because I tripped last week also? Am I like, because at the time what I was reading was, oh, you need to space it out and you need to give space between trips. And again, you, until you have your own personal exploration, you're going to have a basic, flexible guidebook on which you're going to follow. So
Yeah.
those judgmental was there, and I got landed in this barrier in my brain, you know and I kept obsessing over, like, maybe I should do something, maybe I should do something, maybe I should do something, right? And I got terrified. I don't think I had shrooms for almost a year after that, right? During which LSD happened a couple of times, and both
Hmm.
of times I think 150 and 200 mcg respectively. And they were very awakening in a sense where the ripping apart is so true, but it was so liberating because I simply couldn't make a mistake in getting lost in a obsessive thought. I simply didn't have the chance. Yeah, I lost the ability to speak. Along with it went the
Hmm.
desire to speak as well. So silence seemed beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And it taught me a lot of things. Was like, wait, if I don't have a particular sense, and if I do not know that a particular sense world exists, I wouldn't know. I would be happy about it. You know what I mean? Like, on some level, we kind of I'm so sorry. The
No.
other part of the discussion where you said about language and stuff, it all, my I think I started this discussion with you, and I've been very curious for the last month. So I think we should continue that part of discussion sometime. But it's, what would deaf and blind people feel like when we say language has
Mm.
these many things? So are deaf and blind people, are they liberated as they come? Do they not have, you know um, problems they get caught into, conceptual problems, or are they in a different consciousness of the mind, right? Or a different awareness? Of course they are going to be, just because of how their senses are interacting. But leaving that alone, what LSD did was, in some way, it stopped this normal senses of the world. How psilocybin, you said, it took you to the central processing area, or the room where the data is handled in a raw form, which is quite true with LSD. How do I even put it? What if I didn't have senses, right? What would be left? And it was quite interesting. If I didn't have the senses, I'm not going to be obviously able to explain that. But that's the part I was in. And compared to your experiences, it was vice versa, right? I found LSD to be so gentle. And this person Randall, right, he's writing a book on psychedelics, and he was focusing on this one aspect. We do not have many people talking about LSD, so we want more people talking about LSD. And I love that. And all these discussions, right, it's helpful. Your stories are amazing. Like, maybe next time. I bought Penis Envy a while back. It's sitting in my kitchen drawer, and I don't have the guts to take 5 grams. I want to take it. And there is so much that's happening within me. There is this, it's
Yeah.
nice. This nervous feeling is nice,
Yeah.
enjoyable. But where does this come from? What am I nervous about? And when that is there, I feel like my work lies there. I want to find out
Yes.
what, in my sober sense, I want to find out what this nervous feeling is, at least to a part where it is handleable. You know what I mean? Because
Hmm.
I feel like I have gotten to this point with enough individual trips that it's not that I do not want a guide, but I feel like this drug, this medicine, I'm interacting in a one-on-one, and even at that point, this one dies, and that medicine one takes over, and it's quite interesting. There is no external. Don't seem to be. I don't mean to seem to be rude, but it's like at that point there is no help that can come from outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just simply like, literally there is no one outside that can, because you're at that point where, fuck man, it's just you. It's
Yeah.
only you. There is nothing else that's existing, right? So because of that, there is no convincing that, oh yeah, I can have a sitter and take it. I clearly cannot convince myself that even having one best sitter, even if I had my partner, who I'm confident in speaking on my sober times, if I had her sit, it still doesn't give me the confidence to. So hats off to you for doing 10 strips of acid. I don't know if it is trauma based or curiosity based, or where that comes from. It's not a place to question and label it. It's rather we just embrace it and enjoy it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's magic or tragic. I mean, I was with, I was a kid, man, and I was with my friends, and you're not in your 20s, in your early 20s, like your brain's not fully formed. Like, this is a great idea. No, it's not. That's probably not a good idea at all. You probably, but a lot of the times that's when you get your work done. And I'm curious though, if we can go back to your LSD trip, and when your friend came in the room and you were in this state where you were questioning.
And that was shrooms, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so do you think that maybe that particular experience may be affecting why you don't want to do high doses now? Is it that same feeling of like questioning that you were like, oh man, what is this? How come I don't have this job? Or how come this? Why am I acting this way? Is it that feeling of uncomfortableness that the fact that you told me that story means to me that you still hold that story with fondness in some way? And do you
Yeah.
think that maybe it's that particular experience that's maybe putting up a hand to say, wait a minute, I don't know if you should do this 5 grams?
I love it when you call my bullshit, right? See, that's the problem that's sitting in the subconscious, and I definitely think it's the reason. Because if you were placing a couple of taps of acid now, I wouldn't have hesitation.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have a bit of hesitation because of how it has been with magic mushrooms. I think there is a lot of work for myself to do in that area of subconscious where these fears are stemming, and it has, of course, it has a lot to do with that particular night, and also
Hmm.
maybe a couple more other times where I felt like, so what LSD did was take away these concepts and throw it, and I had these, like, this beautiful clay,
Hmm.
which is life, and I can do whatever I want, right?
Yeah.
And as all religion says, do not do something that you don't want to be done onto yourself. With that particular thing, I go about doing anything, and it seems fine, right?
Mhm.
And what Shrooms has done is sometimes played this game with me with respect to the concepts I had.
Mhm.
So my question is like, it's very important for me to have those experiences again to see at what level I have subtler concepts that are holding me from,
Mhm.
being in the present moment.
Mhm.
So right now it becomes the bigger tool. I think that's all I want to mention, because that's what it does. That's what the medicine does. Most people who are afraid of the medicine,
Mhm.
it's just gonna help them. It's just ripping the band-aid off. I truly believe that, right? Like, there is this book this person wrote, and he has been marketing. It's nice. Psychedelics are for everyone, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, he says in a very nice way, psychedelics are not meant to be taken by everyone, but they are for everyone. It's beautiful, right? That's that subtle nuance. It's like contradicting statement put together, but
Mhm.
there is an idea behind it, and I believe that, and all the fear that stems is because of that unprocessed area, right?
Mhm.
But I also feel, having had this experience, when I see people with similar mindsets that I have had 3 years back, I would prefer LSD before magic mushrooms, right? Because even with my partner, I saw that she had taken ACO DMT, and her
Mhm.
come down was introspective
Mhm.
and more emotional. But if we both were talking about this, and these emotional aspects were emotional blackmailing that was done by Indian families, right?
Sure.
But shrooms gets you to that point where you're still emotional about it, so there is no processing. You're just playing that role. It's not that it's bad. It doesn't take you to that awareness that is watching this emotions arising,
Mhm.
right? You get caught in that. I feel like I have got caught. I feel like Uja has got caught, but LSD has ripped it apart like anything. I love that word how you say, it rips that thing. Yet once it's done, when you revisit shrooms again, now it is even at places where you go into the so-called bad trip, there is an underlying awareness to stick with it. Mostly there is this subtle resistance against it that magnifies it.
Mhm.
So yeah, that subtle resistance is acting in my day-to-day life, and you're 100% right to call out on that. And each time I see, okay, I'm gonna do this, it's gonna be there. And I think it's just with almost other things too. I had methyl escalin, right? Malfumarate. I think I told you I'll take it. I did not end up taking it. I freaking I lost courage and I went back to acid. It was amazing. But that day I didn't take malfumarate, and then I met this friend, and oh man, I love this guy. Right? I I love going to meditation because I meet a lot of psychedelic people there. It's great. And he has this box, right? And he has more analogs than any single website that I've seen on Canada, right? Canadian website. So if you put together all these Canadian websites, the analogs are more. But this guy had this box and I loved it. And he has this empty capsules, and he's like, he has written T and P on top of the bottles, right? Uh, P for phenethylamine and
Right.
T for tryptamine, right?
Tryptamine.
And it's quite nice. He's like, what do you want to try? What's your favorite? I'm like,
I think I love this guy.
oh yeah, he's great. Like, um, and the conversations are amazing. So we can have him here, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Bring it. Absolutely. I'd love that.
definitely. And so he chose this. He said, I have 5 MEO MIPT. Have you tried that?
No, I have not.
So I was like, I don't know if I want to do any 5 MEO now, because I've heard that it's just direct. It's too much, right?
Mhm.
But he said it's just 5 MEO DMT, which is gonna be smokable. There are so many 5 MEO compounds, MIPT, DIPT, PIPT, and these things all come in HCl or fumarate, and you can take it orally,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
I was a little hesitant, but you know this guy, I like him. This
Yeah.
conversation, if you were to recommend something, I would of course go and try, right? And at that point, so I held that nervousness and I took it, and it was mind blowing. It was very tactile. It
Mhm.
was very tactile, and I started seeing these nuantic differences between these psychedelics, right? Each one takes you. Um, LSD takes me to void. If not processed properly, it can make you nihilistic.
Hmm.
Shrooms, if not processed properly, can become very traumatic.
Hmm.
And MIPT, in that sense, if not processed properly, can make you, I don't know, sexually fault or something. But that's the beauty of it, right? That's why the set and setting is quite important. And I know your question was so totally different, and I let my thoughts take me to wherever it's going. And uh, so I'm curious about these new analogs. Yet, coming back to your question, there is an underlying nervousness. It's
Yeah.
there. It's there.
That's
It's
awesome.
losing the self. Losing the
Yes.
self. I feel like the ego creates the fear there, because I think ego realizes there is a ego death, because this ego has seen numerous number of times. I think there is just one ego, just like one consciousness. There is just one ego, and that ego has seen millions of psychedelic trips, and maybe it has died in so many countries and so many indigenous people, and it's like, nope, not you. We got
Yeah.
to live this life. Come on, and it generates fear. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, you know, that's an awesome story. Thank you for sharing that. Like I'm gonna get there's some things I want to get back to in there. If we just start at the end of what you said, you know, when you say that there's one ego, maybe there's like one love. And if you look at ego as a loving force that like doesn't want you to get hurt, you know, I think that's a pretty good way to look at it too. It's like this overbearing mother that's like, no, don't go back there. You don't need to revisit that. It's a yeah, no, come on, it wasn't your fault. You know, it's just like this manifestation of love is that doesn't want you to get hurt, so it puts up these obstacles, you know. And on the topic of fear and psychedelics, I think if you're not I think if you're not afraid, they're not approaching it in the right way, or you're not doing the work. Like, you should get to spots where you're scared. Like, it's having the courage to walk to the cliff where everyone jumps off and look down and be like, wow, these people kill themselves right here, you know. Like, and once you've done it, like, so, like, the point where you took mushrooms and then you got scared, like, that is you knowing the trail to suicide. Like, that's a lonely road, man. And like, yeah, a lot of people hear the stories about the rock where everyone jumped from, but only a handful of people can walk to the trailhead. And then only a few out of those people will walk down that trail. And now pretty soon you're holding hands with the guy that might actually jump. And you know, what are you doing there? Well, what the fuck am I here for? You know, like, am I going to kill myself? Like, you start having these thoughts, but you're not. You're just exploring and you're investigating. And the part, I think you were right on the money when you said that, you know, this is the part that you where the work is. Like, that's where the goal is. The part that you don't want to fucking look at, the book you don't want to read, but you know you have to. Like, that's where the real growth is done. And like, let me, if I can help, yeah, I think if you understand, okay, here's a good example. My daughter, when she was 5, she was learning to ride a bike, and we had taken the training wheels off. And in my house, there's like a little cul-de-sac, and there's like a fire hydrant right here, and then it kind of wraps around this way. And so for a while, she could ride the training wheels. We took the training wheels off. She would fall. And then this time, I grabbed the back seat, and I had one hand on her arm bar, and I was holding the back seat, and I let go. And like, she was like, ah, you know, like a 5-year-old, like she was having
Yeah.
trouble balancing, and she was going, and then she fell, and she picked up, she threw her bike down, and she turned to me, Dad, I can't do it. I told you I can't do it. I don't ever want to do this anymore. I hate you. And she's all frustrated. And I went over and I gave her a hug. And she's, I told you I can't do this. It's impossible. Just yelling and screaming. And I go, Sky, stop. Stop. She's like, what? I'm like, look where you started at. You started way over there. I let go 2 steps after that fire hydrant. And like, it just was this realization, like, I did it. And it went, you could see the shift in her eyes and in her body language. And I felt like I could see a new neural connection being made. Like, she was worried that she couldn't do it, but she had already done it. And so the same is for you. Like, how many of your friends have not cut their hair and moved to Canada and started experimenting with psychedelics? How many people do you know that you grew up with that have done what you have done?
At least I have one friend in my house now. Was
Okay.
was my acting as my guide before, but I do understand your point. One of the reasons I keep telling you, right, like this needs to happen is
Yeah.
because of lots of other constricting viewpoints come to
Yeah.
surface.
Yeah. And it gets
As in, like,
easier.
it gets easier, as in.
It gets easier in that if you look back at the history of making these kinds of choices, like once you've done it once, you realize that it works every time. You may not get the results you want, but it works every time.
Maybe
You know what
we
I mean?
That's where the question comes straight for me. Maybe I should let go of the idea of wanting these particular results, because I think that is done again from the subjective mind, and that's what has made me, I've realized over the course of last few years, like, I've lost interest in maintaining relationships with a lot of people. So I think on average I talk to 5 to 7 people in a whole year, and, like, that's it, right? And the reason I'm saying is because before I used to talk about a lot of things that wasn't fulfilling to the soul.
Hmm.
As Alan would say, it's like a club password. Hey, how are you? I'm good. How are you? How's the weather? The weather is good. And that becomes the prelude to whatever you're going to talk about. And in essence, I genuinely want to go to a point of stopping to. I think that's what I said before going to live, right? Sometimes I really, because of the conditioning, I feel awkward and rambling to that question, how are you? But most of the time I seem confident in doing these shitty things, because on some level I understand we're like bunch of kids, we don't know what we are doing, right? And we can do anything we want. But coming to that point, when someone asks me how are you, it's a nice gesture, but what is this conversation going to amount to, right? And when my parents ask, like, oh, did you eat, did you sleep properly, I'm like, I feel like, let's leave these conversations alone. These are basic things. If I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. And if I need to poop, I'm going to go to the toilet. It's fine, I'm potty trained. Right now, let's come to aspects that are affecting us subtly, at a subtler level. Why am I reacting to these way? Right, let's stop seeing outside. Let's focus on what could I do better. So let's try twisting. So, for I think my friend was here, and I, when we were in a group of 15, 20 people, most of the times, if they ask us something before we could answer, we'll be like, oh, it's going to be some philosophical answer, we don't want to know.
Mhm.
Right, and because of that I lost touch, and with a lot of people it was kind of scary in the beginning, but then it became one of the most best decisions I've made for my own sanity and being peaceful. Like, I can just be peaceful, no effort needed, and
Mhm.
no. And one of the things, again, psychedelics and I've done for me was take out this preparation aspect of life. Again, nothing bad in preparing. It just, for me, it has taken out. My work has come to, like, how can I convince myself to kill myself this second? That's all it is.
Wait,
I
so
know. Yeah.
tell me again about the tell me again about your idea of preparation. Like, it's taken away the idea of preparation for you?
Yes. So there are two kinds of preparation.
Okay.
Let's talk about our podcast alone, right?
Okay.
One is preparing what to talk. One is preparing the mindset, having preparing as in planning to create the link and send it beforehand. So I'm
Mhm.
talking about the preparation for those. If I when I have my podcast, I'm gonna send you a link. When you have
Mm.
podcast, you send me a link.
Mhm.
I do not want to talk about that preparation, right? I want to talk about the preparation where I have something to say. You know what I mean? This is one of the things we had. You ask us in the panel about debates. Why it is not as successful as it should be, what can people do, right? For me, I have personally seen that the world has convinced me to prepare for every single aspect, right? One of and it has one in one way it has helped me because I wouldn't be in Canada otherwise. And that's the
Hmm.
funny part. It's so
Yeah.
paradoxical, right? It's the same thing you tell me uh, about cultures. Right now you're fighting against culture, but what if culture was the reason that you realize this? And that's beautiful, and that's how I think it is. Like few lucky conscious beings just gets to see the matrix for what it is and get the chance to step out of it whenever they can, right?
Hmm.
Through any practice. And in that way, for me, I got so frustrated in having to decide what to do, what to wear, how to act, what are the things to say. And it took away the human inside me, the spontaneity inside me. Like, if I had something to say, I'm for me, it was a practice of not preparing because I brought life into what I am doing. Because the other way for me was, again, I was very polarized, right? So I
Hmm.
went into the extreme of becoming obsessed with it, right? And now I know I could talk about the balance between preparation and obsession,
Hmm.
getting it midway. But I rather side with one. Again, I'm going to polar because, as I said, in this world I do not see as individual having balance. As a society we can have a balance, right? And for that, the fight has to be there, the extreme opinions has to be there. And one of those extreme opinions I have is, if you want to be a couch potato, be a couch potato. Do not do anything. Do not do anything. Life will happen. Take care of yourself. See, that's again which we talked about, where that part of preparation, just like creating that StreamYard link,
Hmm.
like that, be self-sustaining. Again, this, I don't know if I should say this in live, but it's the part where, if you want to kill yourself. But if you want to live, make sure you create your surroundings to live. If you're hungry, make sure those things. I wouldn't want to be dependent on another person, because that is going to take away their time for their meditative work to sustain us. So
Hmm.
that's how I see. So get to that part of self-sustaining, and that's all you need to do. That's all you need to do, and you have the choice to either do that or stop existing. In that way, we do not. We get terrified of discussions, right? Death is one of those things. Along with that, suicide is one of those things. One of the reasons I feel deep down, we should joke more about suicides. We should talk more about it, not in a demeaning way. It's that
Hmm.
that why are we, when we realize what are we trying to kill, when we truly realize what are we trying to kill, and if we, the more we talk about it, we don't want to kill it, because we, as much as we are thoughts and Brahma said, we are also living a life of thought. Most of the times addiction is about like talking it, and we do, no one wants to actually do things, you know not in a bad way. Again, don't get me wrong, in the sense that sometimes, you talk about it, it's like, it was nice, nice, okay. I actually don't want to do it. It sounds crazy when I say it out of my mouth, right? So in that sense, I've gotten to the point of like, what if we don't prepare? What if we just live? And that's why my dad still thinks that, get out of this phase, get out of this phase of, you know not having something to look forward for tomorrow. What do I say to people? What is the next thing you're doing in life? Nothing. Maybe eating, drinking, sleeping. Like, this is just human life. Do those things. Have fun in it. You don't need to prepare. Same like doing dishes. We have this resistance to going to the sink, or going to cooking, or going to something. Again, it's all from personal experience,
Hmm.
right? And most of the resistance is nothing. Like, because once you go and you start doing, it doesn't seem to be a task anymore. It's an interaction. It's a dance. It's just happening. Where is the resistance coming from?
I I think that there's, especially in the West, there's these ideas of people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. And like, and while it's impossible to thoroughly understand what's going to happen, and in some ways it's a bizarre thing to do, you can live your life in the future and understand in some degree what that life might look like, and then you can choose to pursue that or not. The chances of you manifesting the exact life in your mind that you think is pretty much zero, but it can move you on that path. Like, you can have relationships with people that may or may not manifest, and in doing so you can prepare to be the best version of yourself in those relationships. When I think
Yeah.
about preparing and I think about death, like, can you tell me a time in your life where you have lost somebody that you loved with your whole heart and how you reacted to it?
That is unfortunately something that hasn't happened in my life, so I have no idea how my fear of death has been hidden deep inside. Because when my grandparents probably passed away, yeah, I did cry and stuff, but it was when I was 5 years old. I mean, sorry, no, 10 years old, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
still didn't understand the full facet. And again, you're in the developing stage. There was no proper understanding of death, or giving the meaning of death, or handling grief
Mm-hmm.
from Indian families. It's more of like, oh, just sit and cry, it'll fine. One more thing, as you said,
Yeah.
fail to plan quote, right? There is one more quote we'll come back to. um, Time heals. Let's talk about that later, but coming back to this,
Yeah.
so I haven't had the death thing, but for me, I'm this insanely obsessed person about having this idea that this fear of death, yep,
Mm-hmm.
this is stemming all desires. All, every single action is stemmed from that. So in one dimension, it's a useless conversation. In an individual level, when we start seeing it that way, I am more curious of how beautiful our subconscious mind is it has this thing suppressed deep down, very deep down, for us to process, for us to act normally, right? Have you read the book Denial of Death?
No.
It's by this author called Ernest Becker.
Okay.
um, it was nice. Again, this guy I told, right, who had this collection of analogs, his name is Sam. He gave me the book Pickle and Denial of Death, since we were talking about these, and it was nice, right? So for me, having read these books and having had psychedelic experiences, when I start dismissing all the things that where concepts are not truly essential for my life, all that remained was, why am I not killing myself? In a very interesting way. I had suicidal tendencies before my psychedelics in a very
Mm-hmm.
serious way. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh man, I can't do what you got to do these things. Like, I would rather,
Right.
I didn't go to any extreme to do anything, but I was totally frustrated. I locked myself in a room, and I kept getting drunk every single day or every other day. And between those 2 days, I was having edible of 100 mg cannabis. Right now I take 5, and I'm in a really good flow state, and I was taking 100 to numb myself, right?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
these beautiful tools I was misusing to just avoid the question of like, man, I had this frustration of killing myself, rather than seeing it, what is the part I want to kill. But we
Yeah.
we do not learn to be, as you said, we are the harshest self critic. More than that, we also do not learn to be gentle with ourselves, initially at least.
Yeah.
I wasn't gentle with myself. And after my psychedelic trips, and I started seeing this, the same questions I had, the same taboo topics of death, which I shouldn't talk about, I started seeing this suicide and all these things. Like, why can't we jokingly talk about it? Therapy does nothing more than give the safe space of getting it out, just so you hear your own words. How such a
Mm-hmm.
lunatic you are. That's what I read a quote, right? Everyone is a lunatic. Those who
Yeah.
analyze their lunacy are called philosophers, right? And it's just that. And there is nothing. The So many rushing thoughts comes because there was so much agitation in my previous life to
Mm-hmm.
get things done, have a status game, prove yourself to society, right? And when these three are broken, you're searching for identity. The identity. My friend who took LSD
Yeah.
1 month back, he was like, dude, I have a severe identity crisis. I'm like, welcome to the club. Nice. If you live the rest of your life with the identity crisis, you're liberated.
Yeah.
That's what I think Goenka says in Buddhist meditation. You got to be equanimous, accept situations as it is, and the reason you need to do meditation every single day is so that in the moment of death you are able to be equanimous. Most times our death fear are so suppressed that we don't seem to think that, oh, I'm not afraid of death, I'm gonna die,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
We have that intellectual thought. I'm just gonna speak personally for me, and at least for my partner. We keep talking about this. Our ideas revolve, and the moment we are in an altered state of consciousness, and to be able to see death upon itself is frightening and threatening. To the point, it's liberating. Again, it's paradoxical. But when it's suppressed, we think we might not react to it. But the moment comes, we kind of react to it. So right now, if I talk, I can say that I can take penis envy now.
Yeah.
The moment I go closer, something is happening. My heart is racing. So why is my body reacting? Where is this happening? So there is a lot within us that is not um, pro- processed yet, or a lot of the subconscious is controlling our actions.
I don't know.
And
I think maybe that's the conscious. I think that you have the idea to do it, but you're holding back, right? And before I get there, let me say this: like, what makes you think you didn't kill yourself when you were
yeah,
doing all that
I
stuff?
did kill myself. I told my
Yeah.
parents, like, your son is dead, you as parents are also done, so now let's start a new kind of transaction in a communication way or an
Mm-hmm.
engagement way, so social way. Forget all these labels. I am, at least
Oh,
according to science, at 25 your prefrontal lobe is developed. Let's say, if that's the hypothesis, I want to believe. I do
yeah.
not know. Those are just one lines I read, right? So I don't know if it's 100% true. So assuming that is 100% true, you are gonna, the same capability you have in making decisions I also have now. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to respect that, and these healthy boundaries have to be understood. And in that sense, there is a depth of me. The what the son you knew and what the plans you had for that particular person is dead.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, death happened. That is why I'm telling you, right
Yeah.
now, when I talk about death, it's so jolly. But I wasn't
Right.
like that. Death used to be something I cannot talk about, right? And I also feel like this is coming from Sam. He's a Canadian, right? And he says it's not just Indian people, because I haven't met as many Canadian people, and this guy has met, right? So he said that is an uncomfortable topic in the West too.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't react as much as Indians. They just subtly stop listening to you or start like, oh my god, I don't, like, these are conversations I don't want to have. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's not going to. The most important thing is that we are answering system based questions on divine based answers. We are like, we talk about death, we say it's not going to pay my bills.
Okay, wait. Let me pause for a minute. Like, how old are you right now? You're 24.
27. I
27. Okay.
started my journey on 24.
Okay.
But yeah.
So I agree. Like, you are reborn. Like, I can totally hear the level of contemplation that you have been going through. It makes me a little bit jealous, because I don't think I could think this deep when I was your age. And what you have gone through to get where you are speaks volumes of your ability to analyze not only your life, but the life you used to live, and having the fortitude to build a new life. That's fucking amazing to me, dude. However, however, imagine, which is going to be tough for you to do, but imagine your son calling you and saying, "Dad, you're dead to me." Like, on some level, and here's the fucking crazy part about being a son. Like, I fought, like, my dad chased me out of the house with a pool cue. And like, we fought or whatever. But I'll be damned if I haven't had to go back to him with my tail between my legs and be like, "You were right." And he just is like, "Yeah, I know, dummy." He's laughing at me like, "Yeah, I know, man." And so, dude, I want you to prepare for this thing, in that, yes, right now you are 100% right. And the moves you're making are the moves that you have to make. Like, you had to be reborn to become the Ranga you are now. And the Ranga you are now is going to be probably better than you can ever imagine. But on that same token, it's also a wrong that your parents could never imagine. So while you died and you had told mom, dad, the son is dead to you, on some level, they can't understand what you're saying. So they're perceiving it in a way that is probably the worst way possible for them. And it's not that they want to contain you or force you to stick to these standards. It's that they don't want to lose the one thing in their life that they're so goddamn proud of, that is doing the things, like you're doing things that your father wished he could have done. You're doing things that your mom is secretly so fucking proud of, that like she's probably inside her mind like, yeah, it's my son, you know? And then but for them to hear the things that you're saying is not being taken the way you're saying them, I think. And like that's probably why you're getting all that feedback, at least from that understanding. And like I think that there's some sort of ideas about death that it is uncomfortable, because when you say death and someone else says death, unless you have a 2-hour conversation about death and we define our terms, people
Yes.
have totally different ideas, you know,
Yes.
especially when you're talking about people who have been around like like on some level, like I think you're going to get your wish about being really close to death. Like we all are. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're all going to get to be close to it in a way that is really uncomfortable. And regardless, if you can, hopefully at the time you can laugh about it. Hopefully you can be at your friend's funeral and play Stairway to Heaven and like, you know, hide to, you know, at least in my mind, I hope that that's what happens. But experience has taught me that the majority of people are unable to look at death the way you and I and maybe some other people can look at it. And when the fucking pale horse comes riding, it's tough to be not. It's the same idea. Like on some level, I think that that's what the psychedelics may be preparing us for, is that idea of death, be it ego death or real death. Imagine the feeling you had on mushrooms when you were thinking about these decisions you were making, and the uncomfortableness that it may still bring up now. Imagine that, but not being able to get past that. You know what I mean? Like imagine not being able to have another conversation with someone to tell them you're sorry. Imagine not being able to find joy in a simple conversation that means nothing. Like sometimes I think that as deep as you want to have conversations that only have meaning, maybe there's ultimate beauty in finding meaning in the conversation that is just, how's the weather today? You know, like maybe there's some meaning in there, that maybe you're talking to someone that admires you in a way, but doesn't know what to say to you. And so all they can say is, how's the weather? And like, but that for them is big, you know.
Yeah.
I hope you don't discount that.
I love this. You know, this is where I used to wonder. You said we have different opinions, right? This is
Yeah.
what you, when you bring to the table, right? There is a realization. Whatever I say, I do not say with this certainty.
Right,
Each
right, right.
each thing I'm saying, it's an temporary point of view which is going to consistently keep changing, right? So I have this
Yes.
view, and from a different point of view that is brought forth by either my partner or you or people that I talk to. It's amazing, and you see from there, and yeah, man, you know, it's true, it's not, and you see that every single one has a good intention, right?
Yes.
Same way, you know, the reason you want to say introduce the word X before the letter X before all the words to mean that it's honesty. uh, that's the part I say when people ask about weather. I do not want to talk about weather or climate change. I want to talk about, you know, that's the part of conversation that I want to change. But still, it's something that I am doing. I want the change, right? So
Yes.
in that, it becomes always the self journey. With respect to your question about what if my son said I was dead, it took me a lot of time to, I wouldn't say I've reached that part of understanding, but it's getting better with respect to understanding the feeling of love, detachment, and letting whatever you love do what it's doing.
Mm.
To truly, and yeah, so right now my focus on death is very strong, that every other day when I'm having a bong or even a joint, right? Like it
Yeah.
takes me right into this paranoia, and I don't get. It's pretty terrifying, and you know you it's difficult to put these feelings into words. So in my thought, it comes as like, wait, if I get diagnosed with this terminal disease, I am going to this hospital. What is that I'm afraid of about? And most of the times, I'm more afraid of the transition rather than the actual non-existence. How am I going to transit the pain of transition? And so okay, this is the death of self, and the people that I've been attached to for so long in life were my parents, right?
Yeah.
So there is a lot of death fear going around with them. They're 60, but I am that's all my preparation I have got to do. I try to
Yeah.
prepare for the death of my dogs, my partner, them, because there is no preparation of death for me, because that I feel like this is where it hits me, that death is not something that I experience. The experiencer in that sense dies, and then that is being perceived as death on the outside world.
Hmm.
So it is quite difficult to hear shocking statements from people who have changed their views drastically, but it also comes to the point where if we do not do these, if we do not have these discussions and conversation, broaden our scope of understanding the world, in some way we are killing ourselves, I feel like. So again, it seems very harsh thing to say. Sometimes I talk to parents or people and I feel like, no man, I don't want this conversation happening, because I feel like there is no listener that side, and because of that there is a judgment this side, or because of the judgment I feel like there is no listener that side, and this is, there doesn't seem to be a harmonious activity happening. It
Hmm.
seems more of a compulsion, right?
Mm.
So how do we, and that is where the uncomfortableness comes, a little bit of
Yeah.
uncomfortableness here and there, and the feeling of something within life, right? Like it has to come for me, the conversation. So when we are talking, right, this is the peak of my life. When I microdose with my friend, that's the peak of the life. Like there is no, mind tries to compare, but there is no comparison. You look back at a particular point in time, it can be the peak of your life. And my work kind of lies there, in just detaching from these things, right? Even with my partner, the relationship aspect, we've been together 3 years, but we got closer so much in the last 8-10 months, because of a lot of suffering that happened last year, and the LSD trip this
Mm.
January, right? And it's so liberating. Now there is a theory in existential psychotherapy that people are not truly afraid of other people's death. Each time they see death, their subconscious realization of their own death comes to a little bit of the surface, and and coping mechanisms come along. So our job would be to put these coping mechanisms away and let all things arise from the subconscious, right? I do understand. See, this is the part, George, we
Yeah.
can keep talking for so long, and we can, these these words are noises, and we create and give meaning, right? And you can literally say anything, and in some way a meaning can be derived out of it. That's how
Hmm.
it is. And in that sense, when you say the subconscious is also you, and you do not want to you're just afraid of taking that move, something is but you are only stopping yourself. That's what I say. Now you're saying you are just you and subconscious. I'm saying scrub the line and you see everything is you, and now the problem starts. You don't see it as a problem. So the same way I am dealing with my subconscious as like I am awareness, and subconscious is subconscious as the other entity, right? It can be a battle also if I choose to, but sometimes this labeling allows me to see that I need to interact with it. Like it's I see it as like a fighting match, a boxing match. I love this analogy where when people box, right, they do not fight the person because of like subjective views or idea. They fight for the fun of it. They break their noses, they they see these things and they hug it out. right? They do not go about fighting in the streets the next day, and the boxers do not show off their talent every single second. Like whenever they see, instead of greeting like this in Indian culture, they're like, yep. They don't do that. And we gotta understand that part with self-awareness, that whatever we say, it's all situation related.
Mhm.
I cannot go to a funeral house and say that, why the fuck are you crying? He's not dead. You bury them, he will be eaten by mushrooms. That's not the right time. But that's what I want to say. I would say that's my calling, to go and make people, if they're suffering, suffer more. What
Yeah,
can
yeah.
happen? You can't die. Suffer more. Suffer a bit more. Like, suffer to the point, ask yourself, why the fuck is this guy frustrating me? Why am
Yeah.
I? And we changed that part. Why am I getting frustrated? And it was a really good question about, what if my son told me that he's dead. I said, and I feel like I want this whole world to act as such. This
Mm.
takes me to this most sensitive discussions of, I think, Jason and you had, and even How to Change Your Mind, they were talking about POT,
Mhm.
and it's restricted use to indigenous people. I'm sorry, I do not agree with that point of view, because for me, psychedelic took me beyond to show there is no us and them. So if I have 10 pieces of strip and there are 10 people interested, and I wouldn't decide that, oh, my friend is coming tomorrow. Fuck that, that's tomorrow. The world could end tonight. So why are we not passionately living like this? Today is the end of the world. It's a stoic thought to ponder as well, right? And the POT guys were saying, and the indigenous people were saying, like, at least for 100 years we need it for our children. This distinction is driving us apart. The more you give, the more you're going to get back. We are talking about supply chain issues and problems like that. Those are not actual concerns. It's the idea that of separating this. There is still an
Mhm.
us and them at a subtler level, right?
Yeah.
If we start working towards that, and if they were to give POT to everyone right now instead of their own thing, it's just a thought, right? It's
Right.
not actual. But if they were to give, there might be, out of that 1% of people who are truly passionate about the plant, and they start growing it. And by extension, it's going to start, if supply chain is the only concern, it's going to boom, because they start see the potential, right? Likewise, I feel like, if everyone felt like, oh, you're dead to me and you want to go, you go. This is what you want to do. Be free to do that. I want you to do what you exactly want to do. Enjoy. you know and whenever we are restricting other people to not let do that, and then the work comes to us, why am I stopping?
Mhm.
Astronomy. There, again, Ramdas. Ramdas, I love, man. I've been understanding a lot more of his words, and when I go to Facebook, there are these points that come. It's nice, and he says that, whenever I act with people, even with the subtlest of the model to change them, at the deeper level of the other person, I sense there is a resistance, and because of that resistance, they shut up, they shut off. Rather than that, I have learned over the course of years that I need to embrace people with whatever they are. What Maharaji did to me, I am here to do to people. It's a very hard journey, because I am a very judgmental person, right? And we always have.
Yeah.
That's why I think I message that those topics, that is models and unconscious bias, right? And
Mhm.
we need these models, like the model you tell your daughter, let's see, you started here, you have gone there. It's a temporary model that she needs to learn a bigger model, but
Sure.
eventually she's gonna go to a point where, like, no, George, you're dead to me. We need that. We need that, not in a bad way. Say that you're dead and still interact positively, and then see what has died. The tension has died. Once I say I'm dead to people, and so I'm dead to you, George, the conversation is happening. So what's that? When the death we are facing, I think we have already discussed, it's the idea of the people. There is no reality to it. There is no reality. The first point we discussed in our podcast is that you are nothing but a bunch of personalities, right? So if we say it's just personalities entailed in this particular body, is that the idea of you that exists in people's mind. When we consider the physical death, and if you are either burnt or buried, you're just converted into something else. You're not gone anywhere. Just like no cleaning is ever done, we just transfer dirt from one place to another, right? There is
It's true,
always
yeah.
there is no there is no cleaning as such, like eradicating dust. We just
Yeah.
keep on moving it, and it's such a funny thing. Same with people when they die. So the physical body dies, the personalities they add, that personality and habit patterns is present through so many people. The same thing you do 75 mg ACO DMT, someone else might be doing. A person would be married to this person and have a 6-year-old daughter and living in Hawaii. That personality might be in another person. So of course you
Yeah.
can put all these bunch of personalities together. It will be in a different number of people, but it still exists in them, right? And let's forget all those and see it logically. The people you talk to, the girl you're racing, she's gonna have values that you carry, right? So you're living through her. But the we are so caught up with the idea of, something, idea of something, idea of this person. And it's very hard. It's really hard, because this conceptual part, if you're able to understand and start, processing it,
Hmm.
the conversations become more, again, these words seem meaningless. The conversations become deep. What is deep here? So it's just, it becomes more fulfilling. You're
Yeah.
not compelled to do it. For me, my life has become from compulsion to free will. That's how I would say.
It's liberating. That's a beautiful way. It's because you can do the work. People can choose to be confined. If there's if if we are all contained in our own prisons, then the prison is just a manifestation of our mind, but so too is liberation then, right? Like whatever it is, it's a choice in some way. And
Yeah,
it kind of saddens me in a way, because at some point, if you look at us as a whole, and I take your point that it's the fear of death. So when I see someone else die, I see part of myself dying. And it's that, for me, it's that part that people get hung up on, whether they're consciously understanding the fear of themselves dying, or if they manifest it as someone else they don't know dying. Either way, they're still dying. And I think at a certain point, and I hope I don't ever reach this point, but it's this idea that you get to a point where I think you just have to accept it, or you just, yeah, I think that maybe acceptance is dying, right? Like if you accept the fact that you're going to die, then you've already died. And then that brings us to Kevin Holt's idea of he who dies before he dies never dies.
yeah. I think that's my WhatsApp thing. It's Eckhart Tolle's thing. It's quite true. It's quite true. Again, it took a
Yeah.
lot of time to understand, right?
Yeah.
Because the words that we are introduced to in the world about death and stuff are just superficial words. There is always a deeper meaning in all the words, and the, our life becomes just an exploration of all these things. Like, it's I also see this the one way, because of how serious my life was tended to. I see
Yeah.
life as one big joke. And when I see videos like Osho having this title in YouTube, and for 1 hour he talks about how it's a joke, and in that sense it's true, but you just can't go and tell it to people when they are going through that process. So that's where we need the time and space to heal, right?
Right.
This acceptance has to happen in complete silence and awareness. It's a lot of energy related work, and I think that's where meditation comes, right? When people die, they have a 10 to 13 day ceremony in India, which I used to be like, this is crazy fucked up, man, what's wrong with you? And I told you, my dad has he did 2 days back, he went for his 56th anniversary of his dad, and I'm so sorry, and thank God my dad doesn't see this videos. Even if he sees, I'll just say chuma dad. So publicity, any negative publicity is also publicity. But seriously, so those things that were done, the 13-day function in India, or the Indian culture, was to provide that support system and structure, right? Like someone is there taking care of things, with respect to taking care of people, the funeral activities. You take the time to contemplate, you
Hmm.
know, and crying can be part of it, but I think on some level crying seems to be the end of it. It doesn't, it's not seen as the beginning of processing. It's like, why does it need to cry? And this is where I also feel like time heals is one of the most misconceived words I've seen in recent times, right? If you give enough time, if you do not do the work, nothing will heal. It just goes into your subconscious that you forget about it. You think it's fine, but your subconscious is now deciding what actions you're going to do without your conscious choice. You're going to be present by it. So when we truly say time heals, we need time to create that space where we can do the work, because this work is just internal work. You sit with it, right? And
Right.
we are not told to, even in India. My partner has gone to India now, and she's just being told that, why are you not normal, right? And
Because
it's
there's no
like,
such thing.
but more than that, it's like, you can be normal too. This is the age to be normal, right? And yeah, there are so many things that comes. And see, this is where I'm trying to say, all these things that comes as anger, I try to redirect. Sometimes I
Hmm.
just go out and say, and it's not what I want to do, but eventually that becomes the point of trigger for me to start looking, what is this trying to tell me? Why do I have the
Yeah.
anger? Because I have done all those actions. When I say I have lived this life and I do not have the particular desire to do something, so in some lifetime I was this greedy person who, I was a slave owner. Probably I did bunch of stuff, and that's where, that's for the logical, rational mind to see that there is a stream of consciousness that flows through death, birth cycle, and there is a philosophical side of, oh, there is no one, there is no you, there is no me, right? We need to use whatever tools we can whenever we can. For me, I am obsessed about this. This is the only work I do. This is the only thing. Any activity I do, anytime I'm sad, be sad, have the with the perception that I can be detached. What is going wrong here? What is going wrong? What is going wrong? And it's as you said, it's the choice we make. Whatever prison that the mind creates, the mind can also liberate itself from it,
Yeah.
right? And the words like, a mind is a good servant but a very horrible master, right? And it's true. I have seen how much I've been terrified of life, terrified of things, terrified of sex, talking to girls, because sex has been such a bad thing. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't talk to girls for, so until 22 I have not talked to a girl properly. Can you imagine that?
I I I I think women were afraid to talk to me because I was so handsome. So I kind of can. No, you know what? I don't think you're alone, man. I think that it's relationships between men and women. Like, you know what? Like, I want to go. I don't. I have to
It's
go.
okay.
I don't want to leave, dude. I don't, because I feel
Uh,
like we're just starting to get into some awesome stuff. Let me go through a couple of things though, real fast before I leave.
yes.
Like, this is real. I really enjoy this, Ranga, and I feel like we're just getting started because I could go for another 2 hours. I feel like we're really moving through some things that are really fun and that can be help to people. So let's see what. Let's come down here to Hank. Our friend Hank has said a couple of things. He said, Timothy Leary said, if you don't have an ego death experience, you haven't had enough. I think McKenna had said something similar too. Like, he had said something like, if you're going to take something and the amount you take doesn't make you cower in fear and say, holy shit, I've taken too much, I'm going to die, then you haven't taken enough.
Yeah.
And I
I
think also he says that, this is for Leary, 400 micrograms, he says, is to be some sort of a minimum.
Oh.
It's, yeah, that's a solid amount. No, that's Timothy Leary, so consider the source. You know
Oh
what I
yeah.
mean?
Oh, I I love this
Yeah.
part where he said, yes, uh, wow, Ranga, I hope you can pay for the serious therapy that George is giving you. I truly agree, because I was literally thinking word by word when you were saying that. Ranga, how is? Do you think that night when your friend came into the room, do you think it's affecting you? Yep, like, yeah. Thanks for calling me bullshit, but yeah.
Well, the only reason I know that is because I have that exact, like, I can't see something in you that I don't see in myself. Like, so I see all of it. I think that's why our conversations are so fun, is that you get to see yourself in someone else, and there's something so liberating and exciting and also frightening about that. It's like, oh man, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. And it's like the game of peekaboo. Like, oh, peekaboo, there I am. But yeah, so Ranga, I love this, man. I think you're an amazing person. I'm so stoked to get to have met you and carry on these conversations. And I'll be thinking about this stuff most of the day. So I thank you for that. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. And Ben, Hank, thank you guys so much. I'm looking forward to all our future conversations. That's what we got. Where can people find you, Ranga? You've got your own podcast now. Do you have a hosting site, and have you finished editing something, or what's your time frame here?
No, after the last talk, my work week started and I worked
Yeah,
11 days, so I haven't gotten to that. My
right.
partner has the copy. She's in India. I think she has edited it. So once that's done, we'll put it on Spotify and YouTube.
Nice.
And yeah, I'm obviously you're gonna be the first guest because I want to ask you the question when I bring you is like, how stupid were you to invite a person like me? Like, what's wrong with you? When I
I got a
saw your
great
message,
answer.
is like, oh, before you give that answer, I read your thing. Like, your invite was beautiful, right? With the book quotes and stuff. It's like, but dude, why me? Like, why are you trying so much with me? And I love that energy that you have carried from day one that I've known you, and it's amazing. That has given a lot of confidence, and you're one of the major reasons that if a podcast was to be outside, it's definitely you. And
Thank
that's
you.
there, and I'm there on LinkedIn, so I'm free to reply to all kinds of interesting conversations, right? I'm just make sure that I'm not a serious person, so do not get offended. I say a lot of clinically insane stuff, like you're stupid fool, George. Go with that thought. Think about how much of a stupid fool you are for the rest of the day, and I'll think about how much nervous I am about the penis envy. So that's the takeaway of the podcast.
It's perfect. It's beautiful. I can't even add any more to that. I
Yeah.
will talk to you soon, my friend. Thank
Yes,
you for
definitely.
everything, and have a
Thank you.
tremendous day. All right.
Okay. Bye.
See you.